So I've got 3 questions to ask: the what, the so what, and the now what about your work here. So the first one is the what. Could you tell us about how the work came to fruition, please?
Yes, my pleasure. It began, I think, with a number of experiences of being lost and wanting to go and explore places, and then finding myself in a state of anxiety because I wasn't sure where I'd got to, not only in this country. And so I thought it was important to try and develop a sense of direction. And I know that other people have this innately; they kind of know where they are, or have learnt how to do it. So I've been trying to teach myself along the way how to do it. So I started to explore this idea, and then it just sort of took on its own life. I started looking at it phenomenologically and seeing that direction is intrinsically part of other things. We cannot separate it from place. We cannot have a direction on its own because it needs to have other things to connect to. It's also connected to time and connected to theatre and how we run businesses and so on and so forth. So direction is a very key term in our lives, in every aspect of them. So one of my practices has been to do Tao movements, the 8 directions, which were developed allegedly to try and invigorate mankind. And so this is a series of movements you do in a place, which whenever I do them outside, I feel incredible energy. If I do them inside, I feel better, but not so energetic. So I think that that's something to do with that. And originally I was going to go to different places to explore whether I could actually get a sense of which direction I was facing as a consequence of being there. What I found was that doing those movements in place just made you understand the place better, not necessarily the direction. Well, I say you, I mean me. This is what's happened to me. So, but I find these movements quite expressive. They're flowing, they're quite beautiful. And I wanted to sort of share this somehow with other people, that they might also benefit from this. And it's been lovely to talk to Beth along the way, who's going to help turn this into a more formal kind of dance. We're going to talk about separately, but while I was doing my journey of looking at directions, the notion of this turning into a dance was becoming clearer and clearer, and I was developing a ballet in my head and working with one person or 50 people, you know, on huge stages or around the country in different places. So nice fantasies about how to turn these movements into a sort of more formal dance. So that's one part of it. The other side of it was really trying to find, if we do separate direction from place, you have what is it, like an arrow, a line? It can only ever go in one direction forever, a bit like in space, these things that go flying through forever. And what would that look like, and how could we catch it? And it turned out, in my head, I was making pots in my head of how to catch this floating direction. And maybe that's what pots were for catching directions. So I started to design, develop these, which I'll come to a bit later on. But first I'll talk about these images. So when I was doing the movements, as I say, I found this much better outside. And I would find being on the edge of the land to the sea, it was the most evocative for me. I would get the most energy in those places. They look nice, they feel nice, it feels like an excursion to go there. So I was going to try and get a video and a photograph of myself doing these movements in each place. And I was going to do Britain, mainland Britain, having the westest point in Scotland, the northeast and northwest points would have been in Scotland. But political movements have made it impossible economically to take in Scotland, so I reduced it to just England. So then I had the battle to move the centre point. So our centre point of our compass of Britain would have been Haltwhistle, which, as you can see, is very close to Hadrian's Wall. In fact, it's almost on Hadrian's Wall. It's almost in Old Scotland. So that understanding of north changed a lot because, you know, being in the south, we think anything north of Birmingham is north. But if we take in the whole of Britain, this is all south. So that was kind of shifting perspective and realising, you know, what we're fed with London-based media and understanding of Britain, the north and so on. So there's that going on. Anyway, so I had to choose Morton as the centre of England, apparently, Morton in the Peak District. And so I decided I would go there. But I'd already undertaken the sort of southwest journey with these 3 points here before I'd gone to the centre point at Morton. That's significant because of the things I was collecting in different places. Originally, I was going to be collecting sand. I wanted the images of the extreme points to demonstrate the place, but I wanted to have more than just a visual experience. I wanted to be able to share the experience of being there. So I recorded video, sound, and collecting the sand. And the sand was going to be near the image, so you could feel the sea and the sand coast at the same time. So that's shifting from my experience to my projections onto what other people would learn, if you like, the experience I could offer somebody else. So I did start collecting sand, but the idea was to incorporate sand in the construction of a thing from that place, and I didn't know at the time that you had to, that sand didn't change its material. You couldn't turn it into glass below 3,000 degrees, and that would require a bit of skill and equipment which I didn't really have access to. but I did think it might work in conjunction with clay. So I started to collect clay, but I didn't start to collect clay until I came to here. Now, if I can take you to when I went to the centre of England, I was also looking at, because we're going through time, when I'm walking through time, I went to a stone circle, and then I went to collect the clay from the nearby river and found this flint arrowhead, which was obviously from the centre of Britain, and just sort of is perfect for being the arrow for the compass that I was working in. Also, because I've always wanted to find one, and it just appeared. So yes, so I started to collect other things. It wasn't just images, and these images have been selected out of quite a lot to just try and keep this going.
This is still my favourite bit, the worm cast from Battle.
Oh, well, I can tell you about that. In my journey, which, as you say, is quite a long one, I ended up going towards Dungeness, and I saw Battle, and I thought, I've seen the Battle of Flodden ground. I want to see where this change of Britain happened. So I went to went to Battle on the way to Hastings, and found English Heritage. And English Heritage was charging a lot of money to go and stay and to go through their portal in order to see the field. And I resisted that because of early experiences with how English Heritage present history, and I really didn't want to have my experience of being on the Battle of Hastings confused by their narratives. So I ended up asking a local if I could get to the field without going through this portal, and I couldn't legally do so. So I went to very close to the field, and apparently it's an alleged field anyway, we're not really certain that that is the field. And I sat under a very old oak tree, which wasn't quite 800 years old, so it wasn't quite the right age, but may have been born from a tree that was alive in the battle. And I sat down and I looked at the ground and I saw worm castings. And it made me think, well, you never know, there may be a particle of some warrior in this soil. So I thought this was significant, that's why I collected this.
So that there could be a bit of William in there.
Could be a bit William, could be a few poor dead Englishmen who or a horse or something, yeah. You know. So that's why I collected the worm castings.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we're on to the so what then, and that is, what has it revealed to you about your initial questions?
So my original questions were, how do directions feel? And I don't know if I've got the answer to those, but I do know that the project and all of the work that I did in the project has revealed a lot of other things to me, which I was relating to direction. And so I have learnt a lot more about how to identify where I am in a place, and I've also learnt how to engage with place more, and I have also got a greater understanding of myself. And I found that as I was doing the collection of images, which I thought was going to be the whole piece, that other art responses were arriving, and this was sort of uncovering sort of old me, or things that I'd wanted to do or tried to do in the past. So there was this sort of walking through time, physically finding bits of ancient England, but also finding bits of old me at the same time, things that I tried to do or wanted to do. Or just that was how I was expressing myself. So finding clays was really exciting. It was so interesting to to realise that I really enjoyed working with this. I don't really like getting my hands dirty, but I quite enjoyed working with the clay. Yes, I kind of feel as though I've got a connection to other people who are thinking about place and connectedness, and possibly, you know, that this work that I'm doing or have done can contribute to learning for people who want to learn how to engage with place. That these are avenues that people can take by just physically getting stuck into things. So yeah, there was a resolution of some old issues as well, not just to do with my choices in life, but also places that had associations, and they were so strong, it's unbelievable. And my example that I wrote on there about Lindisfarne is perhaps the strongest. I hadn't been back there since I went as a sort of teenager with a group of people from school, as a school geography trip. And there were certain relationships with certain people that occurred at that time, which, you know, I knew about, but they were sort of forgotten. And I've talked about Lindisfarne many times. I've been to Durham, nearly gone to Lindisfarne many times, but going back there, suddenly the memories came back. So this association, the discovery of a place again, isn't it? Place having associations, which I didn't feel in other places. You know?
Re-embodying almost.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think probably because, you know, there was some significance to those relationships as well, that, you know, I screamed out for the rest of my life, you know, I would have happily done so forever, but going back there, so, oh, okay, so here's presenting itself again. So that was very interesting, and I think in terms of so what, I think, you know, quite megally, we could say that any action anywhere is connected to that place, so whatever we do has significance. So, you know, we have to be mindful about what we do where. Okay, and permission to flounder. That was fantastic, working with Chris on the way, but just sort of saying, I'm not really sure which direction at times, or whether it should be ceramics or images, or, you know, glass or movement. And sort of well, let's try it, let's see, let's go for it. And that's been a really lovely relief again. Yeah. So.
Before we go on to the next one, can I just ask you about these quickly as well?
Of course.
You made all these pots from the sand?
Okay, so I was going to try and make pots from the clay that I collected, with this sort of embedding the sand in the clays, but finding that once I'd done the filtering, sometimes there wasn't enough clay to make pots, and sometimes it was just too difficult to work with. So I did take advice from ceramic artists, and so I used a basic clay bought from a pottery shop, and then used the wild clay as decoration. So then I was exploring with embedding the sand again. Sometimes that would hit here, sometimes it wouldn't, sometimes it would come off, and you're welcome to feel the effect. And amazingly, some of the people who've been visiting this exhibition, I suppose, have really enjoyed the fact that they can touch things and handle them, and they've just gone straight in there with that feeling, which was like the point of experiment. So also, I've gone through being very playful in my ideas about this project to being very serious, and then coming out again with playfulness. So when I started to develop the lids, the images from, like, this is Holy Island. There was a cross on Holy Island which they had to carry across the water with a Bible and stop the Vikings coming and all that stuff. So the cross appeared. Oh, I'll stick that on. Flamborough Head, there was a lighthouse, which I thought, well, that's a lighthouse. And then I watched the sun rise in the east, and in the southeast I'd seen a boat on the beach. So the things that I'd seen started to reappear in the clay, which was unexpected surprise.
So this is, I think this is quite an important question then, and that is, with a lot of arts-based methodologies and inquiries, I often wonder how the material, or also not just the material that you use, but also the method that you used, how it made you think, differently or critically or at all, really. And so that's the question, I guess, is how did all of that, all of the above, make you think differently, or with, using the artistic method that you use? Because there are a lot of different methods here. There's not just pottery. There's also photography, and there's also creative writing, and so could you talk a bit about that, if that's all right?
I think the overriding thought for my production of a piece to do with direction was to do with the sense of total immersion, that I was going to present an installation whereby people could have a complete sensory experience, a visual one, a kinesthetic one, an audio one, and that hasn't actually happened in the way that I intended, but it's still kind of there. So I think I was trying to think through all the senses at the same time.
Notice the different textures in the clays. So I didn't really notice that I noticed that until I was looking in different bags thinking, well, which one was that? And touched it and immediately knew. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because I've started to gain knowledge. Yes, okay, I wouldn't know it from Adam if there was millions of others, but I knew it amongst my own work. And I think I find working with my hands very absorbing. I enjoy thinking about, well, I don't even know if I enjoy thinking about it. I do think about the things, the places that I've been, where I collected this from, and what it would mean, and the whole question of direction, I guess, with all of it. And also, I have quite a different picture of how these are going to look when I'm making them. This is not the outcome that was in my head. I'm quite happy as a consequence of having produced something. Oh, that's a new surprise. I have got favourites among these pots, and there are some that I wouldn't have shown if it hadn't been for the other ones that relate.
Would you say that the place and the material from it co-created with these, or is it, do you think you solely as the agent created them?
No, not absolutely, wonderful question. No, I think it was the idea, wherever that came from, together with the material. Yes, I suppose that, that a conduit, maybe I am. Maybe I'm a conduit. I haven't got pottery skills in my hands the way that I'd like to have. That's the place, that's the direction, and the place, the time, and the intention for experience. So these pots, these dishes I made specifically so that people could do that. So yeah, there's the outcome informing the piece as well. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. It reminds me of when the artist Cézanne said the landscape thinks itself through me or within me, as well. So I was just thinking, because sometimes with the making clay pots and things, it pushes back, the little knots in it, or the bulges that push you in a certain direction over another direction, lead you down a certain path, and it turns the shape into something that you wouldn't have originally have, chosen. That's all, I'm just wondering, because you've got so many different materials, some coarse, some fine, that probably, would enable you to do one more than another and that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you for that. On to the last question.
Sure.
If I can, oops, my piece of paper's gone. The last question is the now what. That where might this take you in your thinking and work?
I think we're doing this on the eve of us trying to actualise the dance. So I think that is definitely now what is the dance, and especially with the conversations I've had with Beth about the potential for the dance.
In a sense, that was quite an unfair question at that point, because the assessment of the performance couldn't take place because the performance hadn't happened yet, and the performance was quite a significant part of my study. So what now was the dance, and my meeting with Beth face to face and the actualisation of that work that we'd been preparing. But then moving forward, it's about writing this up for assessment, and also taking this into my work, which would be enabling more holistic experiences in the learning sphere. I have also taken this into a direction of more creative writing, which I wasn't anticipating, having been more interested in pottery at the time. But furthermore, I've learnt how to navigate better, and that was kind of the point of the whole thing. I've explored and found out that I have got cognitive explanations for having a sense of lostness, and that has been very revealing.
I also have had conversations with people about doing sort of more in the earth art area. So there's possibilities there for my practice, for my work. I would really like to think that some of the people who've seen this, who work with children or work with people working outside, might be able to incorporate some of the ideas here, because they know they've responded well to being able to touch things, or they've enjoyed the sort of little jigsaw puzzle, or working out what's what. We've got some feedback, but most of the feedback I've had has been verbal, actually, so there's not much evidence of exactly what they've said, but those people who have spoken to me about it have been very appreciative of not having to hold their hands back, and I think that's sort of the purpose really was to try and find experience, or to try and share experience. So there's that element of sort of developing an art practice. There's the element of it hopefully going a little bit further, and maybe I can actualise some of the other things by working with other artists. So the hourglasses, I'd love to see them made out of the sand, with the sand inside. I think that would really be a beautiful demonstration of the sand itself.
So it's the a presentation of the experiential process for you, isn't it, I guess? Then.
More about how other people can have an experience. So what I'm presenting is for other people to engage with it.
I mean, I've been holding back when people have come. I don't want to interfere with their experience. I want to give them an experience, but that's their own experience. So they choose how to participate. And even though I've set this out in a particular way, I'm quite happy for people to handle it. I have noticed that I'm putting things back again afterwards. So there's a sort of little bit of preciousness.
You set it out in a particular aesthetic fashion as well, haven't you?
I've set it out according to the direction. So this is the compass.
Yeah, and it's the same with the chairs and the pictures on as well. As
absolutely, yeah. Yes. So they're all sort of compasses. That's a shrunken Britain. This is the material of Britain. Direction capture pots with elements, and this also is just sort of additional material that I'd collected that I was loath not to include. It could have just been this, it could have just been that, but then the mat came and it just expanded too much, really. But it's been wonderful having this space to show it all in.
And each item has a separate story with it as well for the...
It does, yeah.
It's a huge project.
Yes, it's too big, but I didn't want to contain it to one direction or to one medium. Yeah. That's very much about it.
And of course, the first time fire trials as well. So it wasn't. I mean, this is part of the process as well. It's almost like when you do first drafts of a written piece, and then you kind of reform them in the same way. It becomes something a bit more polished at the end of it, to your more sort of polished, I guess, performative as well. Sort of material piece here, material thesis. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were times, particularly when I was trying to find the beginning steps, how to, I knew it was big, how to contain it and whether this was allowed, all the permissions I had to give myself to explore. It's amazing.
And you've got a huge amount of data that it looks, like you've analysed through the material itself here. And I'm wondering, because of the reading you've done behind it that you had to do for it as well in order to produce, especially some of the creative writing that I was noticing as well that you'd done. Obviously the citation, you can't put a citation on the, well, I suppose you could, but it would be very different. I'm just wondering how you incorporated the research and references within the piece itself.
Is it Ingold who talks about the footprints that we leave in a place and how we walk through a place, and so on, and what we take away with us. So I think that's probably sort of informing quite a lot. But that's
bibliographically, rather than direct citation. Yes, I get that from the pieces. Yeah,
and so with every area that I was looking at, I would end up finding out something else about it. From going to a Roman museum around Hadrian's Wall to reading information that is next to each of the pieces places that I went to maps, to just all that stuff, together with all the learning we'd done, particularly on the place module last year. I think this is really an extension of that.
Yeah. Is it abductive rather than deductive as well? Then I guess it's just, I don't know either. I think abductive. It kind of revealed itself as you experienced it.
Yes,
that sort of Great, thank you very much. That seems, it's quite a journey you've been on, and it's quite a journey looking at it all. It's kind of overwhelming in many respects as well. And some lovely creative writing pieces along the way about your experiences as well, including someone at the chip shop saying, no, it's beef fat or something like that, wasn't it? Beef dripping, my love. Yeah, there you go. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And it's onward from here.
Thank you.